what I'm going to do is just focus on the policies so that it's very practical, so that people understand some of the areas that they can feed into the next manifesto. And it's really important that these policies are practical and they're workable policies. After the killing, the lynching of George Floyd, people have been saying, what do we do? Where do we go next? Now, the policies that I developed for the manifesto gives a clear guidance on where we need to go next. So I do expect policies to be picked from there, or I even expect the Tories to be picking policies from there. There was an announcement this week that what will happen is the Bernie Grant Leadership Programme, there'll be a further investment in that. That was a really powerful policy. And as we celebrate this week 33 years since the first Black and Asian MPs entered Parliament to stop it being an all-white Parliament, we understand just how important policies are. So we've got, first of all, the Emancipation Educational Trust. That is vital in regards to educating everybody all around the country in schools all year round. Now, that Emancipation Educational Trust is more relevant now than it ever has been, and it will ensure that we teach history in its completion. Everybody needs to understand history. The Emancipation Educational Trust will allow that to happen, and I think we need to push with that with some urgency, because that can not only be developed, it can be delivered, and then it can be improved as we go along. And going hand in hand with that would be the Emancipation Museum, where we're calling for a museum. There isn't a museum in the UK. There isn't a museum that talks about empire in the UK. And it's really strange because empire is a huge part of our history. So that needs to be included in the mix. If we can develop a policy around that, I think that would be a very powerful statement, but it will show that we are moving forward. Also, the ethnic minority pay gap. As we know, the government has said that there doesn't need to be any reporting of the gender pay gap this year. Okay, because of the pandemic, that could almost be excused, but there will now be a rolling back and we will go backwards. And as we know, the ethnic pay gap is even bigger than that. So we need to ensure that that is put on the statute books, and that is mandatory consideration for all organisations. So we need to fight for that to be part of our policies. And then we've got the EHR, the Equalities and Human Rights. I almost forgot what it's called then. We need to ensure that that then becomes more independent, and the government feeds into that and refunds it, because at the end of the day they took money out of it, and now the money needs to be reinvested into that. This was all part of the Race and Faith manifesto. We need to ensure that some of the recommendations that we have done are now implemented, such as the LAMI review. We need to tackle the amount of African, Caribbean and Asian children that are in custody. And as we know, there is a education to prison pipeline, so we need to look at the exclusions. And it is vital, if we show that we really have got our finger on the pulse as a Labour Party, that these are the policies that we continue to pursue. We cannot take our foot off of that pedal at all, because things will just roll backwards. We need to ensure that some of the reports, and on Thursday I have a debate in Parliament how COVID has affected the BAME community. And what we have to do is we have to look at the structural and systemic racism that exists in society. And Labour needs to be at the fore of that. And we need to know what we're talking about. We need to know that everybody has that understanding when we take the battle to the Tories, and also when we take the battle on TV. I'll talk about a couple of other things. We need to implement the lessons learned from the Windrush review. That hasn't been done. The Labour Party needs to say that should never happen again, and the compensation needs to be paid. But not only that, the the systematic racism that resulted in that, the hostile environment, we need to make sure that that doesn't happen again. So hopefully that will give a flavour of some of the things with the National Policy Forum that needs to be fed into that to make sure it becomes part of Labour's policy. If we lose any of these policies, I think we begin to lose the heart and the soul of the Labour Party. I think we will begin to lose what it was that brought us to this place. We'll begin to lose why the Labour Party exists. So it is absolutely vital that we hold on to these fundamental principles that we all believe in, and why we became members of the Labour Party and why we fight for a Labour government. We cannot have a Labour government without these fundamental policies. So thank you very much. Thank you.